to, medium to large size businesses that have hundreds of employees. We're trying to make business owners' lives easier, whether that's recording expenses, reconciling, making sure you have a financial statement that you can rely on, or it's something like bill pay or payroll or some type of higher level CFO, tax preparation, tax advice. Kind of the full suite is what we're offering now. But the presentation here is about, directly what are the basics. You meet people where they're at. What are the basics that a real estate agent or realtor or admin or anybody that's paid on a 1099 tied to real estate should kind of keep in mind as they're getting closer to the end of the year. Higher level, maybe entity selection, maybe, moving into an LLC or an actual, formal legal entity that would allow you to take more deductions or insulate your personal tax return from prying eyes. And then at a higher level, or a more relevant topic for right now is, what's going on with 2025. There's been a whole lot of rumblings about what the proposals were before the OBBA passed on July 4th, and kind of what the changes have been since then, and what the changes might be as we get closer to actual filing season, because there's a lot of in-season changes and policy changes that might happen over the next couple months. So there's a lot going on right now. This is absolutely, and it was 100% right in saying this is the best time. There's no time like the present to kind of get ahead of anything that you need to do for 2025, whether that's catching up on bookkeeping, tracking your expenses, putting something in place so that you have it for the entirety of 2026, and establishing that now, and operating as a small business owner. In the front of it, you want to generate as many leads as possible, follow up, communicate with people, establish those relationships. That's what real estate is based off of. Talking from somebody that's not doing it every day, but with the realtors that I work with, it just seems like that is the primary focus, and it should be. In any other business, primary focus is bringing people in the door to a restaurant or getting people in your chair at a salon. That's the focus. The background work of running a small business, having financial statements in place, a lot of times it requires a professional, or it requires a second set of eyes from somebody that's doing it more consistently, that might have another perspective to give you. So on the basic level, but he says track your receipts, operate on a separate business bank account or business credit card. That makes it a lot easier to pull things together at year end if you are pulling things together at year end. So implementing that proactively now, super valuable moving forward. It'll pay dividends in the long run. That taken to the nth degree is open a separate business entity. That helps keep things separate. It helps insulate personal liability for any issues that might arise in a worst case scenario where, a lawsuit isn't covered by insurance. I'm not an attorney, but generally that's the idea of a limited liability company. So the tracking of receipts, having a focus on your bookkeeping, and then moving to proactive planning, making sure that you're taking advantage of all the deductions and expenses that you are eligible for. If there's exclusive use of a place at home, you should be taking advantage of that. Your at-home expenses might be relevant. All of your vehicle mileage or direct expenses related to your vehicle for your payments and your interest and your insurance, there's something there. And if you're not taking advantage of it, it's a missed opportunity. So there are a lot of tools out there to do this yourself. The amount of time and effort that goes into that, a lot of people think it's worth outsourcing, and there's plenty of companies that would happily help you outsource it. If you want to do it yourself, there's never been a better time, because the self-prep, walk you through it software that everybody that is just a simple W-2 earner takes advantage of and is the cheapest possible price. That's great, and it'll probably flag you to a couple options you didn't know you had. And like we're talking about taking things to the next level, to prep, be proactive. The next level of that to get another set of eyes on things is to have a TurboTax Live accountant pop in and help you with your return, or some type of small firm that's not, not a big four dedicated thousands of dollars tax prep fee. The smaller firms are really valuable in spending as much time catering to your experience to say, you might want to prep your return. Let's get a review done by an accountant. It might cost a couple $100, but you'll probably see more than that in tax benefits to go through with somebody that has another set of eyes on it. And the next step to that is maybe I want the service of not doing it myself. Maybe I want to track everything internally, but pass it off to an accountant to give me the actual prep, work through the forms, and not just review the return, but prep it start to finish and ask me any questions that might be relevant to improve my position. That's great. The a potentially higher level of that is having a bookkeeper that tracks everything on a monthly or quarterly basis. That's an action in being proactive. And if it winds up being a scramble in January every year, maybe that's time better spent following up on leads, holding some type of event instead of trying to figure out the tax code, which is thousands of pages long, and being able to pass that off to somebody else. Most proactive, though, would be to have a strategy meeting or contract with somebody that is going to give you, for your particular situation, this is a set of moves that we think you can make either before the end of the year or say the end of the year has passed before April 15th to make sure you're in as good a position as possible. There are ways to move back in time and do things retroactively, but your options become limited come January 1st and further limited come April 16th if we've gone past original filing due date. So it's good to be proactive. That's the general rule. But from the intro level, just getting started, somebody getting involved with real estate, all the way up to, we have an established brokerage. We want to expand into personally held rental real estate or succession planning. There's something kind of for everybody here to say, how can we improve? And if you approach any difficult thing in your life with that attitude, instead of the I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna hope I don't get judged for whatever question I have to ask, and I'm just gonna hope that I don't get a letter in the mail, which has been the case for many clients that have decided to come on board. It's better to be proactive, get out ahead of it. Somebody you pay to be in your corner is almost always better than trying to figure it out yourself or thinking you have it figured out yourself and being told 2 years later that you didn't figure it out yourself. So that's the wide-ranging spiel here, but I wanted to leave a decent amount of time for any general questions or planning items for 2025. So happy to have a little bit of a back and forth here.
I think that one that I see happen a lot, especially for agents that are kind of within their first 1 to 3 years or they're just starting to make money, is that their accountant will say, you need to go buy a car. And you see all of these realtors, Jan 1, riding around in cars that are basically secondary income mortgage payments that they could be making money. So yes. I'm not leading you here in any way, shape, or form, but I would be really interested to see what you would say about buying a vehicle.
So a necessary upgrade, a necessary business use vehicle, and something that actually does, I mean, from an accountant's perspective, I drive a Honda Accord. I drive a used Honda Accord. But I'm not towing people around to appointments. And I don't so much have an in-person brand to produce. So there is definitely a benefit to have a higher quality vehicle, a more reliable vehicle. I love my Honda Accord, but I am of the tack where there's truth. The truth is probably a blend of both perspectives. So I think it makes smart financial sense to not invest in a depreciating asset. I put 20 grand into a vehicle. I sell it in 5 years. I might get 10 out, and that 10 is not worth what it was worth 5 years prior. So that is just generally not a good move. You would rather put it into real estate that's going to appreciate somewhere between 10 and 15% after your tax incentives. Or you'd rather put it in the market. And of all the doom and gloom in the market this year, generally stock market wide, we're at 15% through November 12th. So that's a good rate of return for just putting money into an account and sitting on it. You have the risk of losing money, but the benefits can sometimes outweigh those detriments of not being able to get your money back out. You will see a tax benefit to purchasing a vehicle. If it's over 6,000 pounds, you might see an additional benefit. But my conversations generally are find out where your profit is. If there was a decision that you were going to make in the first half of next year, if you say, I was going to need a car in 6 months, I was going to pull the trigger anyway. If you bump it up to when there's year-end deals going on, or if you find something a little bit earlier than you expected that you could take a write-off up front for and get the tax incentive for, you might as well take advantage of it. And then you get the immediate impact of, I have extra time to plan for 2026. I locked in this deduction for 2025. A lot of other conversations around that does it make sense to finance, to lease, or to buy? A lot of real estate agents are leasing to get into those um, luxury vehicles at a lower upfront price point, not so much of a long-term commitment. And also, if you're going to roll over your vehicle every couple of years anyway, it can make financial sense. For you to get a large upfront deduction, the incentive is to buy. So
What is the number one mistake you see real estate agents making that we're not capitalizing on? Like our biggest, the one thing we could do to get the biggest write-off, essentially, a biggest bang for our buck.
Okay, big bang for your buck is there doesn't require a lot of money down if you were going to purchase a vehicle anyway and you decide to speed it up. There's definitely a lot of missed home office deduction. So the rule is exclusive use and regular use. That doesn't necessarily mean every single day you have to work from home for you to get any type of deduction. And even the people that do work from home and take some type of deduction, oftentimes they're taking $5 business per square foot when the expense of everything has gone up incredibly over the last 15 years, and that $5 has not increased. So there's a one-page form that needs to be filled out that lets you take your actual expenses. So home office, tracking mileage to have a backup for the large business use that most real estate agents have in their vehicles. But yeah, that upfront item
So if everybody on this call isn't brilliant enough to say, "Oh my gosh, we're using you, and Anthony's our new guy, and Cube Pros is our resource." If I were talking to my accountant, my CPA, and I was working on getting my tax docs done, like what should I tell them? Like there's a one form document, and I want to utilize my write off at a higher level. Like what does that look like for me?
we're going to make sure we're filing a form 8829. If you want the exact form number and you need to speak tax pro to your accountant and say, we need to fill out the 8829, that is a great first resource. If you are getting commissions paid through an LLC, there are additional benefits there. There might be a lease agreement between your business entity and you personally. That's something to think about. And we're going farther down the path of, formalizing this, having a separate entity. But that can be really, really valuable to be able to move state taxes that are personally not very deductible onto a business return that allows it to write it off against your business. That's the pass-through entity election. If you do have an LLC, that might be an option.
Anthony,
um,
we find that I think real estate agents have always heard like when you're making about $60,000 a year, that's like the sweet spot to go ahead and do that. I always push my people to go ahead and just get it done as early as possible because by the time you're making good money, it's really hard to go and do some of these administrative tasks because you get really busy and you just keep pushing it down the road. But I have had agents that have gone to their CPAs, which is why we refer you, and they're like, no, you don't need that. You're just gonna have to pay for an extra return, da 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 da. Like, what say you? Like, is there a certain income threshold? Like, what is the mark for you that you say, no, you need to set this up? Because for me, when I tell my agents, I'm like, you should set it up. Like, I don't think there's this moment where the X and the Y cross because there's so much benefit on the other side of it. Yes, there's some expense, but there's a lot of benefit. So what would you say in that situation?
So broad view, what I was talking about earlier with the vehicle, your rate of return is negative if you don't have a business write-off. Every decision we make is a rate of return conversation. That's what they teach you in business class. So the rate of return of investing in the professional fee of an accountant that's actually going to go through things with you is you're almost always going to reduce your audit risk and increase your tax benefits much larger than what that professional fee is. So it makes sense to do it as long as it doesn't take too much time. So this conversation about what's the dollar amount that we move to a separate entity, there's a rate of return on every single one of these things, and they are over and above the expense that you have to invest in the business, which is a write-off anyway, which is valuable. It doesn't return that whole dollar. What returns that whole dollar is the intangible benefit of being more up to date, being able to plan ahead of time and effectively, and not being reactive to an issue. So $60,000 is a natural point to move to an S corporation if you're going to consistently show net profit. That's kind of, it's not necessarily the sweet spot where you would get the most tax savings, but most people would push that that is around the sweet spot where it makes sense to transition. So that's kind of the break even point where it's probably not going to make much of a difference. I would say it's closer to 40 to 50 where you're at break even. You're going to spend a lot more time at 40 to 50 than you feel like is worth it, because if the tax outcome is the same, then you say, or you saved $1,000, but you had $1,000 in additional administrative expenses. You're like, I wasted a bunch of time. It doesn't make any sense to complicate things. But
We had a question just to like get it, because there's the S Corp and the LLC might confuse a few people. Somebody asked in the chat, would you recommend an LLC if you're part-time? I responded, I will ask the question, but generally, if you make 60K minimum, it makes a lot of sense. But actually, that was kind of incorrect. I feel like an LLC out of the gate is a yes. Like you need an LLC no matter what, just make the LLC. And then the S Corp is the difference of transferring that LLC into an S Corp with kind of that minimum break even number. So if anybody was reading the chat, like let's just talk about why you should open an LLC.
yes, great advice. So if you're operating any type of 1099 producing business, you're an independent contractor, you should prefer to have that paid through a separate legal entity. It might not complicate your return if you don't go the S Corp route or you don't have multiple members in that LLC, but it's a very cheap process for the scale of what you get out of it. You're paying for an insurance policy, you're paying for a shore up in your business deductions, and the annual fee, the average across the United States, depending on where you decide to form your LLC, the average is around $100 a year in an annual fee to keep an LLC active. That shores up your business deductions. It's additional proof that you're operating a real business. This isn't a hobby to anybody. But it's also a little bit of limited liability protection. If you open an LLC and have a separate business bank account, and in a worst case scenario, there's some type of professional lawsuit and you don't have insurance to cover that, or the insurance doesn't rise to the level that you're covered, that LLC protection can insulate your personal assets from your business assets and from this, business assigned suit. So that's legal advice. Again, I can't really get too much into detail there, but yeah, any 1099 work that's gonna have a comma in it. So as soon as we go over $1,000 in a given year, or even before you're gonna get into it in the first place, not that much of a chore to set up. I say that because I do it every day, but there are plenty of online providers that would say pay $150. You now have an LLC in your resident state. And that can maybe provide an immediate financial benefit. You get to write off that $150. But long term, you have this wide ranging entity that you can grow into. Even if you're only bringing in 5 grand in your first year, it might make sense to have that in place just so that you're set up in the future. When you do get busier, that administrative task is already taken care of. In a slower year, like if we were having this conversation in 21 and 22, everybody's running around as busy as possible to meet the demand. And maybe this isn't the highest priority. If we're talking in 25, yeah, rates are coming down. People are getting a little bit busier, but you're still fighting for a little bit of action. Now is kind of the time before, one, you bring in a larger client book and you have more consistent calls or a busier schedule. And also the follow-up during the holidays seems to wane a little bit. So if you have more available time that isn't dedicated to your own personal responsibilities, that setup, that LLC setup is really valuable. And yes, the S corporation is a separate step once you get to that. I say more broadly 40 to 60 because it depends on where you're sourcing your income. In a state like North Carolina, it's probably in the middle there. Somewhere lower cost of living, it's probably closer to 40. Higher cost of living like New York and California is probably closer to 60.
Yeah, awesome. Mitch asked, I love this question because I was going to ask something around this. Is there a break-even point for cost segregation? I have heard it's around 500 to 600,000 in cost basis. So I know a lot of questions around cost seg.
Yeah. So 100% bonus depreciation is back. That's what's driving a lot of these cost segregation conversations. They were still valuable last year and the previous year. It's just there might be some demand of a lot of people purchasing rental real estate that want to take upfront expenses, or some other property that might be relevant for cost segregation. You can get a cost segregation done for somewhere in the 1,500 all the way up to like the $9,000 range, depending on the complexity of what was purchased. The break even there is there's really not. I have to the break even there. You're gonna pay a professional fee for getting a deduction up front that you would have otherwise gotten anyway. It's just whether or not you're going to benefit from it in a higher income year. So I can't point to this as an exact break even point because it's different for every person. They might have they might have multiple cost segregations, they might have multiple purchases in a given year. So you can't point to an exact number. If you think you're in a higher income year, it's likely that it's going to benefit you. And taking 100% in 2025 is a benefit over and above what you could have taken in 24. But looking ahead, you have to say, I want as much in an upfront benefit as possible. If I can create a return and then reinvest that in a new property, or I can create a return and then invest that in a new business venture, that is telltale what the government is trying to incentivize you to do is expand your business entity. Purchase additional rental real estate, expand your team, pump that money back into the economy that you're going to get in a refund or a reduced tax bill, and rinse and repeat. So
Can I follow up on that?
Please.
So if you do a cost seg, from my understanding, and please tell me if I'm wrong here, I could do it now, or I could do it in January or February and still apply it to 2025. Like, does it depend on when you do the cost seg?
no, the cost segregation is in the eyes of the IRS, it's considered an appraisal. You're appraising the property. But if it's based off of information, if you purchase November 12th of 2025 and you have that appraisal done in January or February, it still can apply to the 2025 year as long as you're only using what was purchased in 2025 and not additional purchases, the actual expenses or improvements that happened in 2026. The rule, though, is the property has to be placed in service before the end of the year. So specifically for rental real estate, that means it has to have been available for rent. The proof behind that is there was a public listing in place. Whether or not you rent it before the end of the year does not mean it wasn't placed in service. It has to be available for rent. So you could purchase property, have an advertisement in place before December 31st, and not do a cost segregation until much later, as long as that cost segregation is reviewing documents or expenses that were only solidified in 2025. So yeah, the timing there can kind of get wishy-washy. It makes sense to do everything as quickly as possible. But if you're going to have additional build out before the end of the year, then it makes sense to wait as long as possible to take advantage of all of those expenses included in that cost segregation analysis.
I just want to give an example of where Anthony really like strategized this with us. So we obviously purchased this time last year, but we did the bulk of our reno this year in 25. However, we weren't sure like if we were going to get this 100% back or if we were going to lose 20% going from putting it into our 24 tax year to 25 tax year. And Anthony was like, sit tight. I think we're gonna get this 100% back. Like, just chill out. Like you have all of your upfits in this calendar year, so it still might make sense to technically put it in service for 25. And so like, I mean, we were just so thankful that he didn't like. I was just gonna rush through and try to get everything jammed into 24. And we sat tight with 25. So now we're getting our cost seg done in the next couple of weeks so that we'll be prepared for filing. But just like having someone that you can like ping and be like, hey, what should I do here? Like it makes all the difference, guys. Like this is how you hang on to the money you're working so hard to make.
And sorry, I have a follow-up on that too. Sorry, taking up the time now.
Don't be sorry. That's what this is for.
That's why I'm
That's
here.
right. That's right. Stop prefacing. We got it.
Right.
I got this shit. All right. So
Yes.
I bought something in 2016. It's been a rental the entire time. I've been doing, I guess I'm gonna call it long-term depreciation. And I've done renovations to it over the years. Is it worth, I guess, is it worth, and can you like retroactively do that if I'm already taking some depreciation? Is that just cut down, I guess, or what does that look like?
So for tax purposes for Fed and state, you can go back for 3 calendar years and amend to produce a refund. There's no benefit to go farther back than that to amend to create an issue for yourself and to go the other way. But so as of right now, 22, 23, 24 are open for amendment. 25, you obviously can't file yet. So the due date to amend and produce some type of refund for 2022 is April 15th, 2026. So you have about 6 months. It's 3 days from the original due date. 3 years from that original due date is when you can amend all you want. They're just not going to pay out the refund. They can't carry it forward to a future year. That's when it expires. So if you have build out and improvements in 22, 23, or 24 that you might have taken over 7 years for furnitures and fixtures, 5 years for appliances, 15 years for large improvements, or 27 and a half years for like big structural improvements. There might have been an upfront bonus depreciation item. There might have been Section 179 to be able to take on that. So you want to explore those options to kind of create a refund now, as opposed to taking this longer term benefit. Another way to look at that, I mean, it makes sense to accelerate it because the dollar is worth more than it's going to be at the end of that depreciation term. Whatever you've decided to spread out there, the more you can speed it up, take the upfront deduction. Your dollar back in a tax refund now is a lot more valuable than your deduction is going to be in 5 or 7 years. But the caveat there comes like, when something's financed and you fully depreciate it, you still have this cash outlay in future years, but you're not getting the tax benefit. The hope is that you're in a much better place and expanded, and that the tax bill on that 1/7 deduction in year 7 is not as big of a deal as it would be upfront. So
I gotcha. So it's, I guess, because I know Section 179 is for the car too, and for it sounds like for home as well. So, I guess if I sell the home in 4 years versus 7 or 8 years, am I guess, paying partially that back, or is it after a certain number of years that kind of fully dissipates, if that makes sense, what I'm asking?
So yeah, there's a lot of like specific real estate exclusion. So home sales specifically gets a little wishy-washy when you're talking about it was at one point used for rental, at one point used as a personal residence. So that if you're talking about any type of exclusion, there's a $500,000 joint capital gain
Right.
exclusion on a primary home sale. If any part of that property has been previously depreciated, you do, even with that gain exclusion, you do pick that back up when you go to sell. It's the amount of depreciation there is a lot less than the total expenses that you would have deducted for real estate. So it still makes sense to take that deduction. And say I wrote off $5,000 in an expense in 2016, and I have to pick up that $5,000 when I sell in 2025. The tax rate compared to 2016 is probably a little bit lower. And two, that dollar amount I'm picking up that $5,000 later in income, that dollar doesn't mean so much to you as it did in 2016.
Yes.
So the timing there, the timing of ownership, if you buy and sell within a year, there might be short-term capital gain treatment. Probably not, because this is an actively managed entity. The only real time requirement you have to worry about is if you're trying to get that primary home sale exclusion, has to be your primary residence for 2 of the previous 5 years. And even if it's less than that, you get a prorated amount of that exclusion. So that's more a home sale item, not a dedicated rental item. But any of that depreciation you take, yeah, you're going to have to add it back on in the year of sale. It's treated like recapture of depreciation, and the likelihood is you sold the property and you're picking it up in either a lower tax bracket, or the amount of tax you're paying on that pickup of depreciation at the end is not as much as you saved in taxes in the long term. So
Gotcha.
A lot of this might help a lot of our agents here too, to help our clients. But the question I see a lot is I'll have a client call me and they said, well, I'm doing a 1031. It's like in their head, they are so committed to doing a 1031 because they think it's going to save them money. Where sometimes I see it would just be smarter to pay your taxes than to then be forced or pushed, especially in markets that are going like this, into identifying and purchasing something that you might be overspending for because of the pressure of trying to save the tax basis. Can you just give us like that 3-minute elevator pitch of what that looks like or what you've experienced?
Yeah, so I'm both, again, this is like a blend of opinions. There's probably somewhere in the middle that is the right way to approach this. There are clients for which a 1031 is a lifesaver, and there are clients that are adamantly for a 1031 that they saw it online and like they had to do this, but they wound up farther behind in the long run. You're going to pay an additional professional fee. If you have the history of one single family rental property that was purchased for 300 and is now worth 900, and you've written off your allowable 200, then it probably makes sense to do a 1031 and have to purchase some type of replacement property because it's been entirely appreciated. But if something's only been rented for a couple years, you've only taken a couple years of depreciation. You'd rather pick that back up. You'd rather pick up the gain income. So that's probably a longevity of holding the property and depreciating the property conversation. And then the cost of a 1031 wildly varies by the professional that you use. We don't do 1031s. You have to be a third party. You have to have a third party trustee. So we're happy to talk through the tax implications of it being completed and being walked through that steps by a 1031 professional. But it's a conversation between, you need to have a good tax accountant that has a personal relationship with you to say, are you being sold? Is this professional fee too high? And are the tax benefits actually going to provide what you want, or does it make more sense to pay the tax? That's a per client conversation. It's definitely worth suggesting. It definitely creates more work, more administrative work for any of the professionals that are working with the person trying to satisfy the requirements of the 1031. It's worth it to at least broach the conversation and let them direct it, and make sure that if they have an accountant, a professional is included that isn't just their 1031 trustee, that might force the 1031 trustee to operate in a more professional manner, and also might defend the incentive of the client a little bit better from a different perspective.
Help them explore it, give them the CPA, the attorney, and the 1031 exchange company, and see if it makes a lot of sense. Because I think sometimes it's kind of like the cost seg. It might not make a lot of sense if you're not doing it in the right circumstance. So,
and I'm sure there's personal buyers that come in hearing 1031 and think that is somehow relevant to them. It is only rental use and only business use that you can use a 1031. So that's a conversation that I hear constantly from people that have no rental use and have no business use for the property. So there's easily filterable questions, and as soon as you involve an accountant or a 1031 specialist, they'll be able to direct them to say, yeah, this is for you. No, this is not for you.
Wonderful. Well, as we wrap up, does anybody else have any burning questions that they would like to just get out there and get answered?
I have a quick question going back to the car thing. So if I was to buy a car for 70,000 this year, am I able to still, like, how much does that actually come off of my taxes? And then am I able to still use the mileage for this year and the year that I would accelerate depreciate it?
Okay, let's say you purchase a vehicle for $70,000 on December 30th, and you have an appointment on New Year's Eve. You have established business use for that vehicle in this year. You financed the full thing. You didn't trade anything in. You maybe had to put $1,000 down. So regardless of that $1,000 in cash investment in this year, that $70,000 vehicle, if it's, let's say, all of the miles that are put on it, or 9 out of 10 miles that are put on it in that 2 days, create a 90% or 100% business use. So we're talking $70,000. If it's over 6,000 pounds, and you have $70,000 in business profit that you would otherwise have to show on your tax return, as long as it's over 6,000 pounds and you're using it a majority for business, you can take Section 179 there, and you could write off nearly the full value of that vehicle up front. Depends on your tax rate what that $65,000 to $70,000 write-off is worth. But for most people, with a moderate income and paying self-employment tax, if you're filing on a Schedule C, you're paying 15.3% in self-employment tax, plus maybe a 22% federal tax bracket plus a 4.5% state bracket. So we're talking, let's say it's at your business use percentage, it's a $65,000 write-off at 41.8%. That saves you $27,000 in taxes, and it probably costs you upfront in your down payment $1,000. You can finance that too. You can put that on a credit card and get your points. So that's if you're not set up as an S corporation. Tax savings are less in an S corporation because you've already kind of strategized that all of your expenses are not really going to be subject to that self-employment tax. But yeah, if you have already about $70,000 in net profit that would show up on your Schedule C otherwise, and you decide December, the Lexus December to Remember sales event or whatever, that you want to purchase the $65,000-$70,000 vehicle, yeah, that might result in an upfront benefit of 25.
Okay. Yeah, because I wasn't thinking about the new car. I was thinking about my old car, all the miles I drove for the year. So you're going to take either or basically.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
the option of taking actual expenses. If you ever take standard mileage, the only way you get this upfront benefit is if you track your actual expenses. So you still have to track mileage because that establishes your business use to say 90% of the vehicle is business use. But this is another conversation relevant to what we said about that 8829 form for home office use. There's a simple way to do this, and then there's probably a slightly more to your benefit way to do this, which is to track your actual expenses, take the actual expenses that'll allow you an upfront deduction on Section 179 depreciation or bonus depreciation. If you just track mileage, you're going to get 70 to 75 cents a mile, a business mile, and that's in the instance of real estate. I can't say this for everybody, but in the instance of real estate, that is almost never to your advantage.
Okay. Thanks.
I have a question. So sorry. I have a question really quick. Well, it's not quick. I just wondered do you do a lot with like IDC and the like MDS energy development for tax write-offs?
I don't personally do a whole lot, but we have a CPA on staff. We have additional support staff, and honestly, there are separate state provisions that we have to keep up with like constantly.
Right.
So we'll research really anything, and there's not an entity that we don't file for. We do FEC filings too. Like we're very broad. We'll research and give you an opinion on any specific write-off or credit. There's hundreds of credits. We've taken most of them at least once. So business credits or energy credits. There's Fed, there's state, there's oftentimes local rebates. So it really depends on doing individual research ahead of one of those decisions. So
Right. No, I just want, because I know investment time is, December 31st of that program. So I just wasn't sure if you were, but that's awesome. If you guys are just even reach out about that kind of stuff, I can reach out to you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got one more quick thing to throw in there. Anthony, on the lending side of things, I think it'd be important to kind of everybody who's self-employed to kind of get with you and make sure we understand what kind of deductions can be added back in for qualifying income. Because one thing we see a lot when people, I use the term water down their income is, if you want to buy a house, you got to have income. Self-employed, you typically need 2 years. We can get creative, but nobody wants an 8 or 9% rate.
Yep.
So, like for a car, for example, we're talking about the mortgage payments on cars. If your business is paying those for 12 months out of your business account, it's not counted against monthly debt to income. If you're, writing off all your meals and stuff, that's a deduction right off the top you can't add in, but you can add in mileage, you can add in depreciation. So I guess my point is, as self-employed, I think it's important to get with somebody like Anthony, guys, who can help guide you to usable income and still benefit on the tax deduction. So you're not paying out all the taxes, but you're still capturing as much usable income as possible.
Yeah, this is, I call it threading the needle. So there's plenty of real estate agents that want to write off as much as they possibly can. I think they should get their tax incentive that they are legally due. But the problem arises when they want to buy their own property or they want to set up an investment property. And they find that they don't qualify, even though they are exposed to this every single day. And it can sometimes be an embarrassing situation to be in. Those add backs are really valuable. And if you have somebody that can prepare a professional letter that says the owner pays themselves this much on salary if they're an S corporation, they took accelerated depreciation as an add back. They have a home office expense that they can produce an add back for. Or, there might be other individual items that say, hey, for the last 2 tax years, it was this, but for 2025 or 2026, we haven't filed a return, but here's the change. You might be able to produce an add back to income.
Yeah, and that's really important because what we're running into a lot with the underwriting these days is they're just peeling back more and more layers. And we have to get CPA letters a lot of times now. And to find a CPA that's willing to do that is not around every corner, to be completely blunt. I mean, they're
Right.
just not, a lot of them are not willing to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
y'all, it's important to pair up with somebody who's going to help you grow versus restrict you.
Yes, you want to partner in this. You don't want, and you're not hiring an auditor. You're
Right.
hiring somebody to guide you through, educate you about the tax law, and point you in the right direction. Underwriters generally, just in my experience doing this for about 10 years, underwriters, it goes with the interest rate function. So the higher the interest rate, the more we're tightening lending, the harder it is to get approved, even if there was no underwriting process. Also,
Right.
underwriters are generally your point person, is generally intro level. It's not until you get to a supervisor that somebody's been reviewing loans for anything more than 3 or 4 years. So their education about add backs, you have to be the one, or your CPA or your accountant, or your professional has to be the one to defend yourself, and bring up those add backs, bring up any other changes that might be relevant that might improve the picture. If you don't have that in your corner and you're flying blind, you might just take that first denial from an underwriter and say, okay, it's not the time. I'm going to wait another year.
Right.
Which, if we could get something done now, that's kind of the whole push, is to get somebody into a home as early as possible, as long as it makes financial sense for them. So yeah, that is definitely super valuable, and it's one of the highest priorities on our end. I also want to make note the AICPA, which is the professional organization, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. They make the professional recommendation that accountants should not give confidence letters. It's not a requirement of them to give confidence letters or to support a mortgage application. There's professional liability there. There's a whole bunch of conversations as to why they make that advice. I'm kind of a blend of, that's sometimes the case for particular clients that you're not really involved with or you don't have a personal relationship with. Uh, yeah, that makes sense. If a tax preparer is just entering numbers that you give them into a tax return software and that's it, then yeah, they have no confidence about your particular situation. If you're coming in as a non-client and I haven't reviewed a couple years worth of returns and I haven't reviewed what the backup is that supports those returns, then I don't have a whole lot of confidence in what your income is. But it's my responsibility serving the client to get comfortable with it and figure it out. And if there's problems, address those first. But if there are add backs there, or some other type of benefit that I can provide, I need to put myself in a position to do the research for the client and say, here are the potential issues, or no, here's what we need to go back to the underwriter with. That's the difference of having somebody in your corner versus, just engaging a H&R Block tax preparer or a TurboTax Live tax preparer. Just having somebody in your corner is a difference that you're going to get from a smaller, more relationship-based firm.
Awesome, guys. Anna put a boards link in the chat box. So we will also email it out to everyone with Agents Empowered. And we really encourage you guys to share. Our goal here is to make sure that we are creating a community that we are being proactive, not just reactive. We're collaborating with one another, and we really trust Cube Pros. I know my husband's company uses them as well, and they're not real estate agents. They do everything for all different kinds of companies. And so if you ever need us, please reach out. We have Anthony and the team's information in the chat box with that boards link. So feel free to grab that. We will email it back out. And we have some really great coaching coming to end the year. So we're very, very excited about that. We will be skipping Agents Empowered for the week of Thanksgiving. We know that you guys just look forward to this 1 hour every week, but we will be skipping that. And we've got a great lineup coming. So Anthony, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Happy to be here. Thanks, everybody.
You somehow made tax preparation not make me want to, pull my eyes out. And it was a great morning. So if anybody needs anything, feel free to reach out. We appreciate all of you, and go sell some houses.
Yeah, guys, click on that link, put your information in there, and then the Q Pros team will reach out We also have a financial planner that we love, that we have her information on there as well. So just use that link. And next week we are talking about health insurance with Nellie Nakui. If you have not looked at renewing your premiums or your policies and what your premiums look like for next year, I would do that between now and next Wednesday and meet us, because we've got a solution to solve some of that. So
I went from $1,500 a month to, just for me, we haven't pulled Tony over because of some of his eye stuff going on. We needed to finish that out, but my premium went down to $270 a month, and I have a better everything. And they've got a telemed option that's included with that in all of the things. So it really is something to look at. We will make sure that we email that link as well in our follow-up for today.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Go crush it. Stay positive.
Crush it.
Hey, I'm just going to keep talking until everybody pops off. And that'll make everyone get off.